This is the Surly Karate Monkey, and today I'm going to be building it up to replace the bike behind me as my new daily mountain bike. And whilst I'm building it up, I'm going to be explaining the reasons as to why I've gone for this frame, and at the end of the video I'll be riding the frame and giving you my verdict on whether all the hype around it is justified. So this is the Boardman MHT 8.8, and I've been using it as my kind of go-to daily mountain bike for the last 3 years. And whilst I've really enjoyed riding and owning it, I have to say, I think I'm ready for a bit of a change. The only problem is I don't have an unlimited budget. And so it means that if I want to get a bike that's either very similar or at the same spec level as this, it means that I'm probably going to have to sell this bike. Now, I've always dreaded the day that I'm going to have to sell this bike, and that's because when I bought it 3 years ago, it was in a terrible cosmetic condition. And so I took that as an opportunity to do a custom paint job on the frame. And whilst I've enjoyed having this fairly unique paint job over the last 3 years, I think I'm going to find it incredibly difficult to sell this bike, and it probably won't actually fetch that much money. The other thing is I really like the component setup on this bike. So I get on really well with the drivetrain and the brakes and the fork. And so it got me thinking about whether I could reuse all those components and essentially just do a frame swap. And after doing a fair bit of searching, it led me to this, a Surly Karate Monkey. Now, these are actually quite difficult to come across in the UK. In fact, I don't think I've ever seen one out on the trails before. But there's 3 main reasons why I've decided to upgrade to this frame. Number 1 is the versatility. So this bike will accept a variety of different wheel sizes, fork lengths. There's so many different attachment points throughout the bike as well that I can run loads of different setups and loads of different wheel sizes, which makes it perfect for me being able to swap across my components straight onto this without having to spend loads of money on new wheels and new components. So the Boardman MHT comes with a fairly strange rear axle spacing. I think it's 141 boost quick release, which uses one of these quick release skewers, and it's kind of a strange wheel size to have, if I'm honest. Most things now 142 or 148 boost spacing, but luckily I upgraded the rear wheel a couple of years ago to this nuke-proof one, and one of the main reasons I went for one of these wheels is because you can take off the end spacers and then replace them with other ones to change the wheel spacing. So I think these are for 148mm boost. So one of the great things about the Surly is it uses one of these Gnot through axle for the rear, and it supposedly allows you to use 142 and 148 boost spacing. And I think that's in part because with steel you can allow for a little bit of flex, supposedly without damaging it, which is kind of cool. And then I'm going to have it all the way forward in the dropouts, so we've got the shortest possible chainstay length, which should hopefully make it handle a little bit more how I want it. But that's great. Obviously on a normal bike you can't adjust that length at all, so it's quite nice to be able to play with that. The second aspect is quality, and I have to say, looking at this frame, it has been beautifully put together. The welds are incredibly smooth, and you can tell a lot of time and effort has gone into building this frame and making it what it is. So I am going to use quite a lot of grease in here. I've definitely learnt my lesson when it comes to not using enough and having bottom brackets C's in here. But I suppose ultimately grease is cheap. Bike frames are not. So I've very recently started applying a little bit of blue Loctite to the crank arm bolts. So I have had it in the past where these bolts, especially the non-drive side, has come loose on me, which is a bit annoying. It's probably the number 1 reason that I've had to walk the bike home, actually. So recently started applying them. The other thing is I always recommend carrying a spare bolt with you, because if this falls out on the trail and you lose it, then yeah, you're probably going to be walking home. And then I also apply the same logic to the brake mount bolts as well. Kind of the last thing that you want coming undone when you're riding along. So yeah, quite a few people criticising me using these ball head Allen spinners, and yeah, you're completely right. So I think for tightening, it turns out that you should be using the flat end. So you've got a bit more surface area in contact with the bolt head, whereas with this you've only got a small amount of surface area, so you're much more likely to strip the head of the bolt. Third reason is because these frames are known to be incredibly durable. And over the last few years, I've really been trying to invest in buying things that are either high quality, durable items, or items, if they do break, they're able to be repaired. And because this is steel, if it gets damaged or cracked, it should be able to be re-welded, and it's actually economically viable to do that. Whereas with this aluminium frame, if it got a crack, it probably wouldn't be economically viable to try and repair it. I'd probably just throw the frame in the bin. So I think as long as I keep up with making sure this frame doesn't corrode, I think this bike should last a very, very long time. So unfortunately, when I came to edit this video a couple of weeks later, realised that the audio is messed up in a few of the clips. So with the headset installation, again, used a lot of grease in the bearings to prevent water ingress and stop the bearings corroding into the frame in future. Unfortunately, what I found was the steerer tube is just slightly too short. So as you can see here, the stem is completely slammed. Haven't also got quite the maximum clamping force onto that steerer tube either. Now, while it's clamped on there fine for the kind of cross-country riding that I've been doing, I really don't think it's safe. I certainly wouldn't feel comfortable riding anything that is particularly rough with something that hasn't got the full clamping area on there. So I think sooner rather than later, I'm gonna have to replace these forks. So yeah, let me know in the comments what you think a good replacement for these RockShox Rebas would be. And then the last thing was the drivetrain installation. So pretty simple on this bike, it's just the rear derailleur. So I had that installed. I also swapped out the chain for this KMC 11-speed gold chain using my normal waxing method that I do with all my chains. I find it extends the life quite a lot. I went for the gold chain because it was actually no more expensive, and I thought it might look quite good on the black frame here. That said, it is probably a little bit blingy for my taste, but oh well, it's something a little bit different. And then the last thing was to install a new cable outer. Got a brand new Jaguar outer cable on there, get it installed on the bike, and then add these zip ties. It's quite nice that a lot of the frame bolts already had anti-seize on them, but essentially I took them all off and then applied a small amount of grease to each of the threads. Just again, stop water getting into the frame, stop the bolts from seizing into the threads as well. So I did buy this frame secondhand, and I did get a fantastic deal on it. But as you can see, it has already been on many adventures. And so the paintwork isn't quite the best. There's quite a lot of little small scuffs and scratches. And I was deliberating whether I wanted to polish this all up and get it all looking brand new. And so in the end, I decided that for the moment at least, I'm going to keep the bike as is and not polish it up. I think actually it's quite endearing, the fact that it's already seen some use, it's already got a bit of patina on it. And quite frankly, I'm not that bothered about keeping my bikes in pristine cosmetic condition. It's probably going to be back to this level within a couple of years anyway. So I think I'm going to leave it, and then maybe see in future if I want to do a full frame polish. The only thing left to do now is to get out and ride the bike. Wow, I am super impressed already. Such a comfortable bike. I've just done about 10 kilometers and it feels like I've only done one really comfy bike. So while I was pretty disappointed that I'd have to wait for a new stem or fork before I could ride the bike properly, I was really happy with how it was riding. I think for me, I'm unlikely to notice if the bike is any heavier or lighter, but I certainly noticed the additional comfort, though I really can't wait to get out there and do some huge adventures on this bike very soon. Thanks for watching.